Hello and good afternoon friends, welcome once again to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, as you know that in our previous session we discussed on Harappan civilization, we discussed about the origin and emergence of the Harappan civilization. Continuing our lecture further, today also we are going to talk on the Harappan civilization itself. We would be covering various areas such as livelihood of Harappans, various other aspects of economy during the Harappan civilization, as well as what were the factors, what were the reasons for the decline of the Harappan civilization would be discussed in this lecture itself. And for this we have again with us in our studios Dr. Shankar Kumar. Dr. Kumar is Assistant Professor in Department of History, University of Delhi, in the Hindu College. With this note, first of all, we'd like to welcome our guest, Dr. Shankar Kumar. Dr. Kumar, welcome to the EduSet lecture. As we discussed a lot on the origin and emergence of the Harappan civilization, I would like you to please continue the lecture further.
Thank you very much, Geetika, and good afternoon, viewers. This interaction with you is in continuation with what we had discussed earlier related to Harappan civilization. You do well to recapitulate that earlier we had spoken of the pre-Harappan developments in the northwestern part of Indian subcontinent from the context of the Neolithic at Mehergarh. The type site was Mehergarh, and that's how we proceeded. Then we took care of quite a few early Harappan cultures which flourished in this region itself, in the vicinity of Mehergarh, which is a Neolithic site. Say around 3200 BC or around that time, and eventually around 2500 BC we find that a full-fledged urban civilizational complex is to be seen in this area in the form of what we today know as Harappan civilization or Indus Valley civilization. Now, having spoken of the origin, we also proceeded to talk about several other aspects of Harappan civilization, and in yesterday's discussion we had spoken of different areas which were part of Harappan zone overall. But in terms of physical features and natural endowments, these areas were fairly heterogeneous, and thereby eliciting different kind of response from the people who settled in this area. And that gave a fair degree of heterogeneity to the Harappan culture as well, which generally we tend to gloss over in the name of one homogeneous monolithic kind of civilization that we tend to understand with respect to Harappan civilization. So, the point that we are making here, and this discussion would be relevant when we talk of the decline of Harappan civilization towards the end of our today's discussion. So, let's keep this in mind that even in the formative phase, we found that there are different areas with different geographical specifications and different natural resources. Some are close to the sea, some are in the river plains, some are very close to some plateau, some are bordering Indo-Iranian plateau. Some areas have access to sweet groundwater. Some are very inhospitable tracts for habitation purpose and so forth. So, why these things are important? Because this will have some kind of a pertinence not only with respect to our discussion on subsistence pattern or the settlement pattern also, but also the issue of decline of Harappan civilization, how and that also tells us about the sheer character of life during the Harappan times. And while discussing the region-wise discussion, the area-wise discussion that we had initiated, we had spoken of a couple of areas around Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and I think we were talking of the area around the central Indus plain. and that's where we had finished our discussion yesterday. And this is the area which constituted the northern frontier of Harappan civilization, and you can say this is the main settled area that we think of when we talk of the entire area under Harappan civilizational influence. This particular area, as we talked about it yesterday, has some sites like Miyavali, Harappa itself, the iconic one, Kalibangan, Banavali, and so forth. We had said that the winter rainfall in this area is just about adequate, 25 centimeters per annum. And we went on to talk about it that today Harappa, the city, appears to be around 12 kilometers south of the present route of the river Ravi. But we had said yesterday that probably during the period when Harappan civilization was flourishing, probably the river passed closer to the habitation site of Harappa, and it must not have been that far as it is today. And we all know that this area, the rivers are prone to changing its course repeatedly, and this could have been a case. We also said that this particular site, Harappa, gives us the evidence of mud or brick platforms also, buildings raised on these platforms, and that's how we get the notion of citadel area or raised area and so forth. We have evidence of granaries, which are big structures with 2 rows of rectangular walls, with a number of round brick platforms also, which are hollow from within. So the center of it is hollow, and the dimension of it is like 3.5 meters in diameter, and that tells us that it could have been used for pounding of grains. So these structures, Mortimer Wheeler is the one who proposed this idea that it could have been used, these structures, round platform structures could have been used for pounding of grains, and hence the 2 rows of rectangular structures could be granaries or the sites where grains were stored. And all of us know that for any urban center, almost definitionally, urban centers are places where non-agricultural pursuits are given shape, and the basic the core population of urban centers is that of non-agriculturalists. But as we can very well understand that despite being non-agriculturalist, there must be some means and mechanism through which food is supplied to this section of people, and that is what calls for state-like organization or even market, fairly developed market, which can ensure constant regular supply of food grains to urban centers. And if the population density of these urban centers is huge, then we can think of the magnitude of the supply and regularity with which these supplies must be ensured, because one cannot do without food, and that to a substantial section of people. And that again calls for some storage areas, some storage places where food grains could be stored and thereby supplied to the urban centers, and that again calls for some kind of a vast agricultural hinterland around every city. If the city is big, it necessarily should have agricultural hinterland from where these bulk food items can be grown and secured for the consumption of urban centers in return for it could be currency or it could be some other manufactured items. So that's how historically or in archaeology, we tend to look at urban centers. So, mere finding of an urban center in the ancient context would necessitate the existence of a vast hinterland, agricultural hinterland around it, and that's how the idea of these structures being understood as granaries gains credence. Even today, you would understand, or you can do this exercise. I mean, if you happen to enter into a city from any of the highways or arterial routes, if you are alert, you will find quite a few infrastructural installations virtually being present necessarily. For instance, in today's times, so of course, there can be in a city like Delhi also, you can see some very big vertical silos where food grains are stored. It could be FCI, Food Corporation of India storage facilities, or it could be some other storage facility for any city. Again, similarly, since electricity is also one of the essential consumption item for these cities, you will find electric subgrids or distribution centers right on the periphery of a town as you enter. So there are quite a few such necessary installations located not very far from the towns, and it is probably in this context that whenever archaeologists discover a city, they look for the place where grains must have been stored, and in the case of Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, we do find, we do have evidence of these huge granaries, and that's why these structures assumes importance. Now, apart from this, there are quite a few other findings. At Harappa, we find that over 200 urn potteries are kept alongside the road, partially buried into the soil, and they stand upright on the sides of the street. Probably, these structures could be there to receive, to take the refuge. So they could be some kind of you can say dustbins where the refuge could be put, and we also have alongside the roads street drains, which is almost a feature which you can see even in today's times. Alongside the street there are open drains, and those drains are covered with some concrete slabs in today's times, and we have not been able to probably think of a better way to ensure that the water is not coming onto the streets, or to take care of the refuge. It could be solid for those urns, and the liquid refuge through these drains. So that is yet another thing that we get to see. And of course, there are two sections in which usually Harappan towns are divided. One is citadel area, the other is lower town. Usually the presumption is that the citadel area is for the rich and the prosperous, because the room sizes are big and they are usually fortified. At times we find both the areas fortified. So there is a fair degree of variety that we get so far as the structures in different centers or towns of Harappan civilizations are concerned. But these are not very hard and fast divisions, because usually, of course, in the lower towns, in the downtown area, the size of the rooms or dwelling units, of course, are small in dimension. But at times, for instance, in Harappa itself, at one of the sites, we find a collection of jewelry with around 240 gold beads, gold bangles, and hair ornaments buried on the floor of one of such units. So one has to always keep such conclusions somewhat open, because we operate with categories with which we are socialized. That economic status is directly proportional to the size of the dwelling unit and so forth. One doesn't know, probably in the absence of written sources, what actually could be the grammar of society and so forth. Apart from that, what is worthwhile so far as Harappa as a site is concerned for us is to understand that the Harappa site, if you dig it vertically, you will find the substratum of the Ravi culture. Then over that we have Ravi, which is distinctly pre-Harappan. Then we have Cordilleran level, which is again early Harappan. We talked about it yesterday. And then we have 3 levels of baked brick buildings which distinctly belong to the mature phase of Harappan civilization. And then there is some kind of a transitional phase which takes us to around 1700 BC, 1800 BC, and then subsequent to that we have the post-urban phase of settlement at Harappa as a site itself, which is labeled as a symmetry H culture. Which is on the southern edge of the site. So it gives us some kind of an evidence of continuous life, continuous settlement, right from the pre-Harappan phase up to the post-Harappan phase. This gives us a very good glimpse, vertical profile of these excavations can reveal how over a period of time Harappa as a city emerged, and over a period of time it declined, and the topmost layer exhibits a material culture which is quite impoverished. It is devoid of any urban structures with which we tend to identify the iconic Harappan civilization, like burnt bricks, organized cities, drains and so forth. So what we have at the top of the mature Harappan phase is a very ruralized kind of settlement, dilapidated structures, and very few people could have been living, and some of the burial remains which are there appear to be very materially impoverished, and which somewhat tells the story of the decline of Harappan civilization, and how people in few numbers continuing to settle in this area, but the best phase of the iconic civilization was probably gone by around this time. Now, another site, if we see the Ghaggar Saraswati basin, particularly the lower Ghaggar Saraswati basin, which is also the present day we can identify it with Satluj Yamuna divide. We have sites like Kalibangan, Banavali, Rakhi Garhi, Mitathal and so forth. Let's just have a look at the sheer size of these sites. Kalibangan is 12 hectares, Banavali is 16 hectares, Rakhi Garhi is 24 hectares, Mitathal is 7 hectares. Again, as we talked about it yesterday, we have a variety of sites of varying sizes. So again, there is fair bit of heterogeneity and stratification that can be implied through the varying size, settlement size of these settlements. In Kalibangan, we find that the early period of Harappan settlement and the mature period, both the city appears to be, the settlement area is fortified. So there is some presumption of prosperity, and fortification in historical terms is understood as some kind of a defense mechanism, defense structure to ensure that outsiders don't come or barge into this prosperous center and take away the material prosperity and so forth. So this is the implication of these fortified settlements. And in Kalibangan, it is not only the citadel area, but even the lower town, downtown is also fortified. So again, a kind of variety that we get to see. We have the symbolic burials, apart from the ordinary rectangular pit graves. We also have some burials which are in pots and in round pit. So, at a particular city like Kalibangan, we have almost three varieties, three variants of burial practice. Again, this tells us about heterogeneous social composition of the inhabitants of this area, and maybe that they are they have different customs and traditions, so much so that disposal of the dead is done in a variety of ways. And this also goes on to prove the metropolitan character of these towns and cities of Harappa, and probably it is not only from one cultural background or social or religious background, although it's somewhat unwarranted to talk in terms of religious identities, but whatever customary practices that they were following were diverse, and this is evidenced in the diverse burial practices in towns like Kalibangan. Interestingly, from Kalibangan we have the findings of a ceiling where something is inscribed, which is of course the way in which Harappan scripts are known. And the fact that Harappan script was written from right to left and not from left to right is actually evidenced from a finding here, because what happens is that when we suppose we are inscribing something on or inscribing some syllables on a material, and suppose we commit a mistake. Suppose instead of writing A, we have written C. So, what we will do, we will strike it off C and we will again write A to its right if we are following left to right writing pattern. But at Kalibangan, the tablet that we have, the ceiling that we have reveals that the mistake has been corrected and it has been rectified by writing the same to its left, which means that the Harappan script was written from right to left and not from left to right. So, this is one thing that we can think of so far as its pertinence to Harappan scripts are concerned. I'll rush through some of the sites of, again, Mohenjo-daro, which is in Sindh area. Now, this Sindh area, you will find that to the west of the river Indus and the areas to the east of Indus. So, we find that more sites are concentrated in the area to the west of Indus in Sindh area, and there are fewer sites to the east of Indus in Sindh area. Why do we get this kind of a pattern? Probably because there is more flood discharge in the western part of the river, and therefore there is more alluvial deposit, and which is so conducive for agriculture, and therefore the agricultural potential of the area to the west of Indus is more as compared to the one to its east. And very logically we find that Mohenjo-daro happens to be on the western part of the flow of the river, and again the size of mature Mohenjo-daro as a city is again very expansive. It is 125 to 150 hectares, and which is Mohenjo-daro was also accessible from the Bolan Pass, and that tells us that the foundation of the city or the sheer survival of the city was somewhat multi-pronged. It was not only on account of agricultural suitability that Mohenjo-daro could thrive as a city, but its nearness to Bolan Pass also ensured that it could function as a very strategically located trade center as well. And we have findings where we can testify that it was a very good production site, and transactions were happening. So there are a lot of seals and several artifacts of exchange very much present in the archaeological remains that we find at Mohenjo-daro. It is one of the most extensively excavated sites of Harappa. There are some 300 structures, 700 wells have been unearthed. Marshall and Mackay's study reveals that there could be 9 phases of Mohenjo-daro as a city, with 3 distinct periods into which it could be divided. And despite this, the lowest of the layers are still unexcavated because of the subsoil submergence. If you excavate further, it is the subsoil water which takes over. Therefore, these layers are still not excavated. And we have a wide range of shells, stones, metals. Bronze dancing girl has been found from this area. The iconic priest king stone structure is also found from this area, which again tells us a lot about the urban character and the amenities and the diverse functions related to artisanal activity, trade, exchange, and also probably the political the site being some kind of a politically prominent center could be a claimant to being the capital city, either of the two, Harappa or Mohenjo-daro. One doesn't know the actual grammar of politics in Harappan times, but it stands as a very good candidate for this. Now, I would straightway come to some of the sites in the run of Kutch, and one of the recently excavated sites in the run happens to be Dholavira, and this is on the Khadir Islands in Gujarat, and it is on some kind of a sandstone outcrop. Dholavira's, or in fact, if we estimate the population that could have survived during the Harappan times on Khadir Island, which had Dholavira, the estimated Harappan population happens to be more than the population on this part of Gujarat in 1990. And that tells us the story as to how sophisticated their survival strategies could have been. And please remember that a run is never a very hospitable kind of environment for human settlement, and yet we have a very thriving Harappan site like Dholavira at this place. We have several sweet water wells in Dholavira, and the excavation of Dholavira has revealed very sophisticated ways and means of using water both for irrigation and drinking purpose. The channels, the way in which it was distributed. So, damming of the small rivulets, the way subsoil water was probably extracted, and the present Dholavira is 50 hectare in expanse, and it could have sustained 5,000 to 10,000 in terms of population. So, and what was the hinterland? Where was the hinterland? If it happens to be situated in the run, that is still a big question mark. And the archaeologists think of it as some kind of a riddle, or maybe that future researchers throw some light on this aspect of the Dholavira's lifestyle, because as we discussed earlier, that if you have a town, you need to have a vast hinterland in order to regularly and perpetually supply food grains to these urban centers, because urban centers by its very nature are non-agricultural people. They are not engaged in agricultural pursuits. I'm again glossing over quite a few sites for the want of time, and let's talk of another site on the Makran coast. I'm just using some of these sites which can be used as some kind of a type site in different physical conditions. Now, on the Makran coast facing the Arabian Sea, we have sites like Sukta Jindor, Sotkako, and also Prahag, which is almost along the Pakistan-Iran coastal lower area. And we have these sites as small settlements, but substantial stone fortifications can be seen, and the gates of these sites are somewhat guarded. They are quite narrow, and that tells us that it could have had some kind of a military functions. Prohibitive kind of entry is suggested by these structures, and the weather conditions are so inhospitable and so terse, so to say, that we have hot air, torrential rivers, poor soil, and overall the site appears to be very unattractive for human settlement. And in fact, the rainfall that happens, 95% of the rain actually gushes into the sea, and there is hardly any capacity of the soil to retain this moisture, and so even agricultural potential of this area is extremely meager. And yet people lived here. There are Harappan settlements here. What does it say? It tells us that Harappans settled in different areas not only on account of suitability of the sites for habitation, but at times strategic, military, trade concerns also guided the settlement location of quite a few sites in Harappa. So, what we are seeing here is an interplay of multiple concerns, and it is this kind of multiple interplay of concerns which can be understood as the factor behind the sheer variety and richness or heterogeneity that we get to see so far as Harappan settlement pattern is concerned. Although at a very general level it is said that the settlement in ancient times was guided by say absence of you can say some factors which are very challenging. So, it is the durability, it is the assurance quotient of things being normal that dictates the settlement pattern of ancient civilizations. But in Harappa, we do find that at times or at places we have very inhospitable areas also populated or being quite a few Harappan sites in those tracts which are not very attractive so far as settling in those areas are concerned, and that tells us about the plurality of concerns guiding the settlement pattern of Harappan towns. So overall, what we have is I have flipped through, I have in fact glossed through quite a few sites, but the overall pattern that emerges, I am just quoting some of these. If you see Mohenjo-daro, it is a highly productive areas with tremendous capacity or tremendous opportunities for trade and commerce, and probably it was also a political center. It's a very good wheat growing zone, and it's on the Indus plain. So, this is one patch. If you see Sukta Jindor, it could be the location can be justified on account of its functioning as a port town. So, it is merely on account of trade with Mesopotamia or the overseas trade, which could have been the guiding factor behind the location of this particular site at this place. It is not agriculture, it is not artisanal production. If you look at Balakot, Nageshwar, sites like Balakot and Nageshwar, they appear to be there not on account of its agricultural suitability, but on account of its marine shell processing center. So it is an factory site, we can say. There is a lot of artisanal activity, workers are there, there are broken pieces of these bangles and sea shells as part of the archaeological remains of this area. If you see the areas like, or sites like Roper, we have a combination of fertility of the soil and also its location at the nodal point of water transportation down from Kashmir area. So these are some of the factors which tells us that it is not only agricultural potential but also trade potential, also waterways suitability from the point of view of transportation, communication, or overseas trade and so forth. There are quite a few sites which are exclusively factory sites. So they are production centers. If you see a site like Shortugai, which is not exactly a Harappan site, but actually Harappan trade outpost, which ensured procurement of some semi-precious stones from Badakhshan area and so forth, and that's how perhaps it was routed to several Harappan sites where we find these semi-precious stones being present, being used as grave goods also, or very you can say rich possession items, and we have the entire fabric of heterogeneous pattern emerging so far as the settlement pattern and also the subsistence pattern of Harappan civilization in this period, in its mature period. Now, coming to the period around, of course, there are quite a few elements of Harappan art and religion, but since we have limited time, so let's first see if we can cover the decline part of Harappan civilization, and then if we have time, we can take up some bit of discussion related to Harappan art and religion as well. Now, what happens in the archaeological excavation is that by the time we reach the layer which is dated to around 1700 or 1800 BC, we find that most of these flourishing urban centers or habitation sites start becoming very materially impoverished, and that goes on in the overall narrative of Harappan civilization as beginning of the end of Harappan civilization. Now, in the historiography, it was earlier registered as some kind of a sudden decline of Harappan civilization. So, in the 1950s, people used to write that probably it were the Aryans who came from the Caspian Sea area and came to settle in the northwestern part of India around the Indus, who were the chief destroyers of the Harappan cities. There are allusions made to some references in Rigved and several other literary references. For instance, the chief god of Rigvedic times, Indra, is referred to as Purandhar. Now, what does this word mean? Purandhar means destroyer of forts, and as we know that Aryans were not city dwellers, they were essentially pastoral people who knew little bit probably about agriculture, and they took to agriculture in a big way only when they settled in this area over a long period of time. It was only after 500, 600 years of their stay in this part of Indian subcontinent, that they took to agriculture in a big way, probably on account of contact with the pre-existing population, and it is only subsequently that they went on to become town dwellers also. So urbanism comes or is visible in the Aryan story only around 600 BC. But before that, all through the Vedic period from 1500 to say 700 BC, we don't have much evidence of urban centers. So they are not urban dwellers, and yet the chief god of Rigved, Indra, being described as Purandhar, this fact was heavily used in order to buttress this hypothesis that Aryans were the ones who destroyed Harappan population, who destroyed Harappan cities and so forth. And that's why, or that's how the decline, the process of decline triggered, or the process of not decline, actually sudden end happened. There are other archaeological evidence which were cited at around that time. For example, at some of the sites, quite a few skeletons are strewn all over the road, and they are not formally buried, which is again symptomatic of some kind of a fight, some kind of a skirmish, and which again is taken as Aryan versus Harappan fight, and but they are unwarranted kind of hypothesis, and there is no exactitude with which we can pointedly say that it were the Aryans and it was not on account of some kind of interfighting or so forth. What we have subsequently as a result of archaeological studies and so forth is that now we don't push the date of the coming of the Aryans to this area, the Indus Plains or the Sapta Sindhu area before 1500 BC, and these people came, Aryans came in several bands, and so of course they came at different points of time, but no band came before 1500 BC. Whereas most of the Harappan settlement areas or cities had already declined. The process of decline had already triggered by around 1700 BC or 1800 BC. So there is a good gap of around 200-300 years that separates the arrival of the Aryans and the decline of Harappan cities. So that hypothesis is of course contested and not regarded as that credible in the present times. We also have several other propositions related to the decline of Harappan civilization. For instance, one proposition says that it is the frequent change of the river course, particularly the Indus. It is known, very well known, that as a river, Indus is almost notorious so far as changing its course is concerned, and compounded with this changing course of the river is the issue of this area being seismically very fragile, and this is something that geologically is confirmed as well. Even in the present times, almost every 2-3 years, we do get to see or we do get to hear of some reasonably major earthquakes in this part of the world, in this part of the Indian subcontinent. We all know that the Himalayan mountain range is actually a folding kind of a mountain, and it is a mountain which is still young in the sense that it is still rising in its height on account of tectonic pressure of two big land masses, and that means that the geological profile of this area is very unstable, and resultantly very frequently we have instance of tremors and major earthquakes visiting this part of the Indian subcontinent reasonably frequently. And that could have been one of the reasons as to why people in Harappan towns stopped living in this area on account of frequent occurrence of tectonic disturbances. Mohenjo-daro, as we discussed, was itself probably relaid as city for 7 times. There are 9 distinct layers of Mohenjo-daro, and that could have taken a huge toll on human labor and several other things. Also important is the fact in this context is the hypothesis of frequent flooding. Now, what these tectonic disturbances do is that if there is one flow of the river, then as a result of this tectonic shift or earthquake, one part of the river bed goes up and the other part goes down or remains where it was, and therefore artificially damming, or in fact naturally damming the flow of the river, and hence there is huge submergence of the area around where the tectonic disturbance has happened. And that could have been one of the factors behind decline of the city like Mohenjo-daro, because at such cities we find sand deposits which are trapped over the mountains surrounding the area at a reasonably good height of unthinkable proportion. Although the other proposition is that these sand deposits are as a result of sand dunes or the huge sand laden winds, which are again a characteristic feature of these areas, because the overall condition is semi-arid. But this is a proposition nevertheless. And to cap it, as the most recent of the hypothesis which is presented in relation to the decline of Harappan civilization is the one of environmental degradation. So what has been done is that the overall population of a city like Mohenjo-daro has been estimated, and then it has been worked out that the total population of a particular city could have been this, the total cattle population could have been this, and this could have required this amount of land as agricultural hinterland. And in the absence of some kind of continuous technological upgradation, please remember that Harappans were not using iron plowshare, and hence they could not utilize the subsoil moisture to a great extent for agricultural purpose. There was some kind of overgrazing of the hinterland and overutilization of hinterland, and leading to denudation of this area. So the hinterland became arid, and its capacity to sustain a city population declined over a period of time. And this could have been a factor in the process of people leaving these cities eventually, and that's how probably Harappan cities declined. But all these explanations don't quite satisfy the criteria of decline all across the spectrum. So what we need to understand, and that's where we said that our discussion was pertinent here, the heterogeneous aspect of it, that there is no need for using one particular cause as the cause for the decline of. It could have been many. So Mohenjo-daro area could have registered decline, and that is something which is registered in time also. So some areas of Harappan civilization declined, started showing signs of decline around 2000 BC itself, while some other areas continued up to 1800, 1700 BC, from where on it started the process of showing decline. So there it could be a combination of various factors. So heterogeneous factors, the plurality of factors could have been the reason for decline of various centers of Harappan civilization. But what is distinctly visible is that what declined actually was the urban aspect of lifestyle. So long distance trade went away, writing tradition went away, urban aspects, urban features went away. but quite a few elements of Harappan life did survive in the subsequent Chalcolithic settlements that we have, not only in the Harappan area but also very in huge concentration in the areas around Malwa, Maharashtra. So we have Ahar culture, Jorve culture, Daimabad, etc. in the subsequent times, which do carry some semblance of Harappan legacy. And that's how I think the process of Harappan decline needs to be understood.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for delivering such a nice lecture. And I would like to tell you all that you can access this particular lecture with the help of YouTube, and you can access this lecture multiple of times so that your knowledge is added up with what all Dr. Shankar has said. And of course, if you have any queries, you can mail us at info.cec@nic.in. I would like to repeat info.cec@nic.in so that the next time when Dr. Shankar Kumar come, we would definitely solve your queries. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.